Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
He has spoken. Good morning, Amy Jacobson here in with John Anthony, who's in for Dan Proft. Of course, I'm talking about Daniel Penny. He gave the exclusive to Fox News' Judge Jean Pirro. Why do I always mess up her name? I'm just going to call her Judge Jean. And the former Marine described what was racing through his mind when he was on that subway floor subduing Neely.
He was just threatening to kill people. He was threatening to go to jail forever, go to jail for the rest of his life. And now where I'm on the ground with him, I'm on my back in a very vulnerable position. If I just would have let go, now he turns.
Why is that a vulnerable position?
Well, if I just let him go, I'm on my back now. He can just turn around and start doing what he said to me. So
Killing,
hurting.
And really, he has no regrets. If he had to do it all over again, he would, even though he was called, for years by the left-wing media and pundits that he was racist and he was Hitler and all that, the routine. But no regrets here, folks.
what in you caused you to want to get involved?
I mean, I'm not a confrontational person. I don't really extend myself. And I think this type of thing is very uncomfortable. All this attention and limelight is very uncomfortable. And I would prefer without it. I didn't want any type of attention or praise, and I still don't. The guilt I would have felt if someone did get hurt, if he did do what he was threatening to do, would never be able to live with myself. And I'll take 1 million court appearances and people calling me names and people hating me just to keep one of those people from getting hurt or killed.
And now Donald Trump and Daniel Penny have something in common. D.A. Bragg tried to bring them both down, and they both won. And now, after the verdict was rendered, or he was found not guilty, of course, BLM was outside screaming.
He was hungry! He was killed for being poor! No justice, no peace! Shame on you! No justice, no peace!
And BLM was all ready to go.
They will not find a white man guilty of killing a black man in modern day America. This is no different than Jim Crow. This looks like a picture out of the picture book when you look at that anonymous jury. We have baby boomers who were there doing Jim Crow on this jury. We have young people who are looking at Daniel Penny as a hero. And what America is a hero, a killer. He didn't give a crap about Jordan. The medical examiner said Jordan turned purple. Yes, black people can turn purple when they're denied oxygen. Every lab report showed he died of asphyxiation. And that doesn't matter because they want to spare a white man the penalty of his crimes. America has not changed.
And then they were going to march. And they did have a march, but they didn't burn the city down. There was a call to burn it down, and that did not happen. With more on this and other topics, let's welcome back to the program Scott McKay, publisher of The Hayride and senior editor at American Spectator, also author of Racism, Revenge, and Ruin, and King of the Jungle. Good morning, Mr. McKay. How are you?
Hey, Amy. How's it going?
Good. So in your article that you wrote for Spectator.org is where you can find it. The civil rights era is over. Good riddance to it. You mentioned that BLM is at the end stage of the civil rights movement. What exactly does that mean?
Well, just, you played that clip of this individual who declares that, a white man can't get convicted of killing a black man. I called Derek Chauvin and asked him what he thinks of that assertion. We're a very, very, very long way from Martin Luther King in 1963, who asked to be judged by the content of his character rather than the color of his skin. And I think most Americans have long since recognized that what's left of the, quote unquote civil rights community, when Black Lives Matter and Ben Crump and people like that are the active ingredient in it, no longer really has anything to do with civil rights. It has to do with an identity group that seeks power, for itself, for the purposes of power. And what we see with Black Lives Matter is this is the lobby group for street criminals in America. Mm-hmm. They don't represent black people because, most black people are law-abiding, and when they have interactions with the police, they don't turn violent. And they certainly don't accost people in subway cars and threaten to kill them. My guess is there were a lot more black people in that subway car who were, had those threats hurled at them than were making those threats. There was one guy who had more than 40 arrests on his record, who was a violent criminal, who was homeless by choice. This I guess it was the city of New York set this guy up in an apartment, and he picked up and left. He'd rather live on the streets. Plus, he had a fatal dose of fentanyl in his system, apparently. And so what you might have had was sort of the same sort of thing as George Floyd did in Minneapolis, which was a guy who's wigging out because he's about to die from a fentanyl overdose. And, people have to step in and prevent him from hurting other people. And it goes badly largely because of the drug. And what you could maybe say was that it was the Chinese who killed Jordan Neely. The interesting thing is back during the George Floyd days, there was some pretty credible evidence that it was China that was backing Black Lives Matter. So, at some point you recognize all of this is just a massively corrupt scheme by people who really, really don't like America. And you can act accordingly in your own defense, which is to say, we're not going to give this any credit anymore. And if they want to try to start burning cities down, we call out the National Guard and we make sure they can't do it.
Right. Are they irrelevant now? Because
I think
there was no call to arms.
I think that Black Lives Matter is now irrelevant. I think that people recognize that this is, somebody pays them to start trouble. Because the arguments don't make any sense. You can't assign any racial animus to what Daniel Penny did in saving those people from a deranged lunatic who was threatening to kill them. Like that's not James Earl Ray. Okay, this is something that is a level of absurd and a level of jump the shark that most people can't stomach, which is why when Penny was acquitted, the whole country erupted in joy. And these idiots are out in the street in front of the courthouse acting like this was some sort of Emmett Till type situation, and that clearly didn't resonate because there's no factual basis to it.
Yeah, I do believe that there is still some relevance with BLM, the organization, because I think people need. There hasn't been another group that has risen up in there to take over for BLM, because BLM, I do think they're headed out the door. I don't think they're quite there just yet, because they
still have money, right?
Right, they still have money, and they continue to be used as a prop of the Democrat Party, and I don't think the Democrat Party has given up on them all the way. So, Scott, I agree with you in part.
Well, John, what I would say is this, and good to see you this morning.
I know.
What I would say is this. I don't disagree with you. I think the Democrats are still going to try to use BLM as, a cudgel of some sort. Uh-huh. But this is the thing, okay? We are, and I've written this a bunch at the American Spectator. I'm actually working on a book that I'm hoping I'll be able to get out by the end of January, called The Revivalist Agenda, that's going to go further on this. But on November 5th, kind of the world changed. Like, we entered a new era of American politics.
Yeah.
And and so a lot of these old sort of things that have been going on since 1932 almost, the assumptions about stuff have changed. Like you can look at the Pete Hegseth confirmation, right? They were going to play the old game on Hegseth. They were going to do the politics of personal destruction, like the Clintons used to call it. And it went nowhere, right? Because the American people were like, we're not putting up with that. We know what this is about. Y'all don't care about Pete Hegseth's, conduct in his personal life because none of you have exemplary conduct in your personal lives. What you care about is that he's going to make changes at the Pentagon that you don't want. Right. And so a lot of this it's the same thing, right? This is an exercise in trying to hold on to power that you don't deserve because you haven't done a good job with it, right? And so the Democrats may continue to try to use Black Lives Matter. The problem is it makes things worse. And they're due for a time in the wilderness that will be extended if they hold on to this kind of thing.
But Scott, it also what's so much more important to your point is having somebody like a Donald Trump who won't falter, because what happened in time past, Republicans would have buckled. But Donald Trump is not that average or normal Republican like we've seen in past years. He's more of a listen, man. I'm not giving up. If this is who I want, this is who I'm going to get. This is why I hate he gave up on Gates, because I would have loved to see the firestorm at DOJ with Matt Gaetz, who knows everything that's been happening over there at DOJ. I would have loved to see that fight. And I like Pam Bondi, but she's no Matt Gaetz, correct?
Yeah. Well, I think Gaetz was sort of the opening sacrificial lamb on this, so that you can't accuse Trump of being stubborn or inflexible, right? He throws Gaetz out there. Gaetz was always going to go into the media and be a talk show host. I mean, that's like what Matt Gaetz was born to do. And now he actually has sort of the scars to give him some street cred as he goes to OAN. But the thing of it is the old school Republican playbook was at the slightest hint of trouble, you run for the hills. And that model has been broken. It doesn't work anymore. And so, you have a totally different reality, because think about everything and how it works in Washington. And it doesn't work when especially people on the right go, no, I don't play that game. Right.
Yeah,
that's all changed. And actually, the racial piece with Black Lives Matter, and which is nothing but a game of intimidation from the very beginning to the end. Like when nobody pays attention to that and says, yeah, that doesn't have any validity. I'm not falling for that. Like, what do you do at that point? Yeah. Think about think about Jesse Jackson and what Jesse Jackson's business model used to be, right? We go shake down corporations and say, we're going to bring idiots in red T-shirts out front of your building and protest how racist you are. And then they're supposed to just negotiate against themselves to how much money they're going to give Jesse. Yeah. When the corporation then says, no, I'm not giving you anything. How you like them apples? Like that whole business model falls apart, right?
Great book by Kenneth Timmerman.
I think that's where we are.
Great book by Kenneth Timmerman, The Shakedown on Jesse Jackson. But I want really, really quickly, because I know Amy wants to move on. I also think Matt Gaetz was used, and I think this was day one, to use to expose the enemies within the Republican Party, it worked perfectly.
No doubt.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Amy.
Oh, no,
yeah, no doubt. No, you got that exactly right. I think Gaetz was there to smoke out who the problem children were in the Republican Senate GOP caucus. And he did that, right? Yep. They found out the four people that I'm not voting for Matt Gaetz of any way, matter, or form or whatever. And it was like, okay, now we know the people that are going to need to be leveraged to get all of our folks confirmed.
Yep.
And so that was kind of, if you think of it as that sort of tactic, I think it was brilliant. And I think you're right that's what Gaetz was there for.
All right. One article that you wrote, Hope returns miraculously to Baton Rouge. Tell us about high school football coach Sid Edwards.
Yeah, this is an underrated story, I think. So Baton Rouge, actually, Sharon Broome, who's been the mayor of Baton Rouge for the last 8 years, is from Chicago initially. So thanks, guys. She's probably the worst mayor that we've ever had in this city. We're, I think, number 182 out of 182 in public safety. And there's a new city that got incorporated from this, fairly wealthy area in the southern part of East Baton Rouge Parish called St. George. And the vote was like back in November of 2019. She filed a lawsuit to try to stop this thing after the voters voted to incorporate the city, and has never put the tax revenue St. George was supposed to get into escrow. So the city parish of Baton Rouge owes St. George like $250 million and could go into municipal bankruptcy as a result. So all of these things are coming, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I could bore you with about how bad she is. And, it's been 20 years since you had a Republican mayor of Baton Rouge, and none of the local Republican politicians wanted to get in. So this high school football coach who has won state championships and taken multiple teams to the playoffs, was a National High School Coach of the Year that the NFL named him a few years back. I mean, legendary figure in town, up and decides at qualifying, hey, I'm going to run for mayor. Didn't have any money. Nobody knew he had any, ambitions to get into politics. In fact, for 8 years, he didn't even vote because he just got disgusted with the whole thing. And so that was actually the big attack that they went after him. And the voters put him in 54-46 over a two-term incumbent because they were so sick and tired of typical Democrat politics and the utter failure that comes from that they were like, fine, we'll try something new. And so he's putting his transition team together now, and it's like the most exciting time that we've had in this city for a long time. 20 years ago, we used to talk about Baton Rouge as America's next great city because it has tremendous, tremendous assets and really ought to become a boom town like an Austin or a Charlotte or, name one of these cities that's really taken off in the past 20 years. And it never happened largely because of bad policy. And so now we have a chance to reverse that. And again, it's another one of these data points toward, hey, there's something new is happening in America. It's a little different political era where things that you always thought were impossible are now possible, and things that you always thought were, this is how you handle things. You can't handle them that way anymore because people are onto the game. And so really exciting. And it's a lot of fun to see all these things happening really everywhere you turn.
Yeah, I have family in Baton Rouge, so I love that. I love visiting Baton Rouge.
Yep. All right, Scott McKay, we're going to have to leave it there for today. You can get all of his readings at spectator.org, and you definitely want to read the article, Hope Returns to Baton Rouge. So thank you, Scott McKay, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Take care, bro.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, John. Have a good one.
You too, bro.
You too, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Amy Jacobson and Dan Proft here, and we want to tell you about our 2020